is online training and also on site, and you will learn about testing approach in application programming interface, how to send API, and how to request how to how to perform API requests using Postman. This training will help you learn more about testing approach using application programming interface, which is API. Then the agenda of this training is for you to have understanding of what is API, why are API important, and API testing definition, the advantage and the bugs we look out for while testing API. Then API testing approach and best practices, while testing API method and response type, and key things to look out for while these key things to look out for in API testing, tools used for API testing, and API testing example, how to create our first API request. Then what is API? API stands for Application Programming Interface, which API is defined as a set of rules which contain clearly defined method of communication. API helps different software components to interact with each other, and it can also be defined as software to software interface that is enables two applications to exchange data among each other. So um, let me give us a better explanation of how API works and what is API. So API is just like a set of rule, is is more or less like a middleman, in between two applications, to interact with each other. An example I can give you of is I have a restaurant, so I'm going to categorize the restaurant, as a server, and inside the restaurant they call them runners or waitress, and me, I am a customer, so I walk into the restaurant, I tell I give the waiter, my order, the runner, and the runner pass it to the chef, in the kitchen, and the chef start making, preparation, for my order. And as soon as my order is ready, the chef pass it back to the waiter or the runner, and I make payment, for my order, and I get my burger. Let me assume I requested for burger, so I get my burger, and I'm happy, and I can, have my burger and feel okay. And another example, is an ATM machine, an ATM machine, and I'm a user, and I have my ATM card with me, and I have a bank account. So the I am I the user, I need to get cash, out of the ATM machine, from my bank. The ATM is standing as a middleman, in between me and my bank account. So first thing to do is I need to slot in my ATM card and try to withdraw some cash. That is if I have certain amount of money. If I have the minimum balance, for me to make the transaction. So the ATM machine is performing a role of API calls, like a middleman. The ATM machine is communicating with the bank, to check if I have minimum balance, to perform the transaction, and it's also validating, if I have a bank account, with the bank I want to use, and also if my details, my data, exist in the bank database. So the ATM machine is performing all sorts of interaction, between me and the bank. Imagine I have a 5,000 naira balance, in my bank account, and I want to withdraw the cash, from the ATM machine. So I imputed, 10,000, and meanwhile I have 5,000 balance in my account. When once I slot in the card, and I initiate the withdrawal transaction, the ATM machine will communicate with the bank, and to verify, if I have an account, then if I have the minimum balance, of the withdrawal I want to make. So once the ATM start interacting with the with the server, with the server or the bank, or with a bank, and it tells me, okay, I have insufficient balance to make this transaction, meaning that I don't have enough money in my bank account to make that 10,000 naira withdrawal. So the ATM is serving as an API call, in between me and my bank, to get out cash. And another example, the line that says it can also be defined as a software to software interface that enables two applications, to exchange data from each other. So I'm going to give you an example of transportation app. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yes, we
All
can.
right. All right. So I'm gonna the line that says it
Yes.
can also be defined the software to software interface, that enables two applications to exchange data from each other. So I'm going to give an example of Uber app. I downloaded an Uber app on my phone, and Uber enables you, to make two type of transaction. It's either you are paying the driver, with your card, or you are paying the driver, with card. So as soon as I sign up, for Uber app, and it gives me the option of, okay, how would you like to make payments, for your ride, if by chance anytime you make a request for a ride, and I initiated to add in my card, into the into my Uber app that is being downloaded on my mobile device. So I had in my card. So the point of you adding your card, on Uber app, if I know most of us might have that experience, while adding your card, to Uber. So what Uber does is that they kind of perform, some authentication and some validation, with your card, to check, whether you have money in your bank account. So they will debit you, I think, 100 naira. So after they debit you 100 naira, just to confirm, you have money in the card, then they will revert back the the money that was being taken, from your account, just to make sure, you have money in the card. Then you get a response message, card added successfully. And another one is probably you added your card, and at some point you exhausted money from your bank account, and you need to order a ride, and you don't have money on your card, and you are using preferred payments, as card trip, and you initiate you initiate a ride request. The request will go through. The driver will get your request. You will notice, after some few seconds, maybe like 5 seconds or 10 seconds, it will tell you that card payment trip cancelled, invalid payment method. Probably gives you a message that, okay, you don't have enough money, to in your card, to initiate this ride request, switch to cash. So the communication, in between the bank account and Uber, there is an API calls, working, in between for the transaction, interaction between your bank and the Uber application. And another example is interface to interface. You eventually order an Uber, Uber ride, and probably you are going to the island from the mainland, and you need to use the GPS navigation. Uber, okay, this applies, for the driver app. Uber have its own, it has its own map navigation system, but you choose to use Google Map. The point of view, tapping on the Google Map, to use Google Map as your preferred map navigation. That is API calls, in between Uber and Google Map. So do we all get the analogy, the example I just gave, about API calls and how API works, in between two applications? Do we understand, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So okay,
Yes, we would.
as seen on the screen is examples I've made earlier. So if you look at the screen very well, you will see an image of of a male and of a female, and you can see an ATM machine. You can see a bank ATM machine, and you can see so this is the good example of how API works. So API works in between two applications. That is, um, it is communicating with the data with the server and giving you a response at the front end. So we have the back end and the front end. So the interaction between me, the ATM, and the bank and my bank is called front end and the back end. So this ATM serving as an API, API call, to interact. You can see entered pin, and the bank returns back that okay, my pin is validated. Okay, this card is I'm the rightful owner of this card. I have access to use this card. Then I enter the amount I want to withdraw, and the ATM machine sync with my bank account, to check to validate if I have enough balance, to make the transaction. And the bank gives me a response saying, okay, amount approved. I have enough balance, to make transaction. And then I click on okay, withdraw cash, and then the bank automatically updates after the transaction. Okay, maybe I perform a 10,000 naira withdrawal and I have 20,000 in my bank account. They update my the bank updates my my balance to 10,000, me having 10,000 balance. And that is how you see account updated. So you see how much balance you have in your bank account. So another example is a login is you signing up for an YouTube account, either on your mobile device or on your laptop. And you after signing up, the at the point of you trying to sign up or trying to log in, there is an API calls, and this is called a server. So the server is where all data is being stored. So imagine I'm using a mobile device, and after signing up, I need to log in. I pass in my username and I pass in my password. Then I click on login. Immediately I click on login. API is already working, in between this my mobile device and YouTube server, to validate okay if I have existing data in the server for me to have access to my dashboard, to have access to my YouTube dashboard, as seen on the screen as an example. So then why performing API requests? There are three tie architectural structure. Tied to API calls. You can see this is the client, this is the server, and this is the database. So from clients to server, validating, if your request, if your data exists or your data does not exist, is in between is working in between is called the API. You can see you've sent the request and you expected a response, to show on the screen, to the server, to the client, which is me. And then this is the server, communicating with the database. So a database is where information are being stored, and server is just also a middleman, in between client and the server base, and API in between the client and the server is exchanging information, to fetch details, from the database. So while performing API, there are three levels, there are three levels of layer, that is um that is that is being performed. So the first level we have the presentation layer, and the second layer we have the business layer, and the third layer we have the database layer. So where is API testing performed? There are three separate layers in a typical app. So the presentation layer is the user interface, as explained earlier, and the business layer is the database layer for the modeling of the manipulating data. API testing is performed at most critical layer, which is the business layer, in which business logic processing is being carried out, and all transactions between the user interface and database layers happen. So this is just a quote from Johnny Walker that says an analysis at Foster's research described like a building of a building an application without an API as basically liking as basically like as basically like building a house without no doors. The API for all computing purposes is how you open the blinds and the doors to exchange information. So if you understand this code very well, this man is trying to tell us like, okay, if by chance tomorrow you need to build an application, for example, I gave this an example in the last class. If you all join online and on sites in the last class, I gave an example of a mobile banking app. So what this guy is trying to say is that if you decide to build a banking app tomorrow, and suddenly you just build the banking app and you have no API documentation to back up this your banking application. And in the last class I gave an example. So imagine after you building the application, and suddenly a customer tries to log in on the application, and all your customers are unable to perform transaction or trying to log in on the application, and you don't have an API documentation to even test, okay, let me see where this fault is coming from. And because you don't have an API documentation, to quickly run the test, to see where the fault or where the issue is coming from. So your application will be rendered useless, and even the developer that build up the application might even get lost, to from it to might get lost, in terms of fixing the bug or fixing the issue. So this is the reason why API documentation, is always necessary, to back up your application. So I'm going to share my Postman collection with you. So I have several collection of projects here. So all these projects are already live projects, and this is their API here. And we as a tester, we pick up the API documentation and start replicating, and start testing the API call, by adding the URL and validating the response you have, in your the response you get, you validate the response you get while testing the API with what you have on the documentation. So in code, if you build an application without backing it up with an API, it's just like you building a house, without no doors and without no windows, for people, to make a passage, to move, around the house. So that is what this man is trying to say in code. API is very important, while building an application. So why API is important? API can be as a service, for developer. Each time developer writes a new program, they don't have to start from scratch, like the example I gave earlier, to build the core application that tries to do everything. So instead, they can contract out certain responsibility by using already created pieces that do the job better. There's an API for just about anything we can think of. According to the programmable web, there are more than 20 API published. And beyond this publicly exposed API, there are numbers of private API, in estimated. So what I'm trying to say is that there are several type of APIs. We have the private API and we have the public APIs. For example, let me give some examples of the public API. The public APIs are like Paystack, Google, Twitter, Instagram, and Flick, YouTube, and etc. So imagine I build a website, for a business, and right for my business, I have a social media account, like Facebook. So I'm gonna give an example, up here. Let me use can somebody give me a business I can look for? Okay, let me use a banking app, GT Bank. GT Bank. So let me go to GT Bank website. So imagine I build a website, for GT Bank, and GT Bank have social media handles, and everything. So you can see WhatsApp here. So because this site is already created, and and this is an API call. So once I click this WhatsApp link, it's working with WhatsApp API. It's a WhatsApp API key, that redirects me to WhatsApp chat channel, for me to chat with the bank. And another example is Facebook too as well. Another example is Google Map. If by chance I need to get to any bank location, I can click on the location and find a direction. You can see this is a Google Map API integration, that is being embedded, in this GT Bank website. So if by chance I need to go anywhere, I can just use this Google Map, to integrate me to Google Map to navigate to any GT Bank, bank site, I need to visit. So all this guy you are looking right here on the screen is an API integration key, and this guy you are seeing here is an API integration key, that is being embedded in this website. So as defined, API is interaction between it's in between two application. So as that is understood. So popular examples of free API, which I already mentioned earlier, we have the Google Map API, we have the YouTube API. If you have to use any of these API calls, to add to your application, you can just Google Google Map API, or you Google YouTube API. You get the link, to the API. All you just need to do is
Yes,
just
sir.
copy the key.
Yes, sir.
Please, can you mute your mic? It's just to copy the key and integrate it to your website or integrate it to your mobile app. So API testing. So we already mentioned what API testing is. So it's a type of software testing that perform verification directly at the API level. So it is the part of integration testing that determines whether your API meets the tester's expectation or of functionality, reliability, and performance, and security. So API testing is a verification, of is the verification directly at API level. It is a part of integration testing that determines whether your API meets the tester's expectation of functionality and reliability. So, remember, I mentioned, when application is being created, please, guys, 1 second, please.
Okay.
Yeah. So remember I mentioned, while testing API, there's always a API documentation, created, for the application. And we as a tester, where we come in, so we pick up the API documentation and go to our Postman and depends on how we get the API documentation, either by URL link or either by JSON format. So we pick up the API documentation and start performing the request, to validate the response body. So we pick up the API documentation. So depending on how we get the API documentation, so some might come in as a URL, like maybe like something like this. So let me find a sample of URL. So the API might come, in this format, which is URL. So what you need to do as a tester, you go to your Postman and start creating collection folder, for each of these endpoints. So as seen on the screen, for example, this log a message, from a user is an endpoint. Another This log issue is another endpoint, and get support is another endpoint, and this is how it looks like, when you come on your Postman and you start creating. So first thing you need to do is create a collection folder, to name the project you're working on. And if your documentation have a subfolder, you create a sub you create a folder, inside the collection. Then after creating the folder, you start adding the endpoint, to the collection folder, which you've created, initially. So depending on how you get your API documentation, so you validate the response you got from the server with what you have on the documentation. So the advantages of API testing is time effective, when being compared to GUI testing. So API testing is more or less like once is more or less like you testing the back end of the application with what you have on the front end. So imagine I pick up an API documentation and I started testing, maybe when I log in on the application, I'm supposed to get a welcome message saying welcome David, and I tested on the back end. I got welcome David. Then I tried to log in at the front end, which is on the application itself, and I saw welcome iChat. There is a problem. There is a bug. I'm supposed to get, with the test data I use, in consuming the API endpoint with what I use, consuming, from the front end at the same data, and I'm getting different response message. So this is what we test for, while testing API. So we compare what we have on the GUI with the API documentation, and also API test automation require less code, so it can provide fast and better test coverage. API testing helps us to reduce testing costs with API testing, so we can find minor bugs before the GUI testing. So what this means is that, before even developing the app at all, before deploying the app, so testing the API, give help us to find more bugs, before while the application is created. Because if you test the API, before the GUI is being created, if you find more bugs, so it reduces stress, of you finding more bugs, while testing the GUI. And these bugs will become bigger during the GUI testing. So finding these bugs, in the API testing will be cost effective, to the company. So API testing is language independent. API testing is quite helpful, in core functionality. So we can test API without a user interface. Please note this: we can test API without a user interface. That is, in GUI testing, we need to wait until the application is available to test for the core functionalities. And API testing helps us to reduce risks. So these are advantages of API testing on an application. So common test on API, we have some common tests we can perform on API, which is as follow. So we test API, to verify whether the return value is based on the input condition. So that means the response of the API should be verified based on the request, which I already explained earlier. So we also test API to verify whether the system is authenticating the outcome when the API is being updated. Is been updating any data structure. And also we test API to verify whether the API triggers some other event, or request another API. So, for example, the reason this is just an example saying that maybe sometimes while we test API, maybe you need to perform a login functionality, and you initiate the login functionality, and it's instead of you logging into your own dashboard, it returns you, to another person's dashboard. So these are the reason why we perform API testing. So we perform API testing to verify the behavior of the API where when there is no return, value sent. So imagine you sent in a request which you expect a value to be returned, and suddenly there was no value returned. Please mute your mic. And there was no value returned, with what you have on the documentation. So this is the reason why we test API. So in the for us to have a better understanding of what you've said earlier, we will perform a test, with a dummy API. So you will get a better understanding of what I've been talking about earlier. So API testing types. So there are several API testing types. So we perform validation testing, on API. We perform functionality testing on API. We perform load testing on API. We perform error detection on API. Also security testing and GUI testing. Also penetration testing and false testing, in API. So the type of bug we face while performing API testing: issues observed when performing API testing are stress, performance, and security issue. Then another one is duplicate or missing functionality while performing API. Then another one is reliability issue and improper messaging response, and also incompatible error handling mechanism. And another one is multi-threaded issues and improper error. So API testing approach and best practices. So this is just a testing approach of API seen in a diagram. So if you follow the flow, we have the API specification review, which is the API documentation, then the test specification development record, and we have the API API test framework development, and we have test case development, for API, and we also have text executing reporting API. So this test case development, I give us a scenario, it's just a coding test scenario, creating sanity, checking test suite, and surveillance test suite. So we create API documentation while performing API test. So API testing approach. So furthering the point that help users, to do API testing approach. Number one is understanding the functionality of the API program, clearly define the scope of the program. Number two, apply testing techniques such as equivalency classes and boundary value analysis and error guessing while writing API test case. Then number three is input parameter for the API needs to be planned and defined appropriately. Number four is creating API test cases, which I have explained to us in the last class. Number five is executing the test cases and comparing the expected result with actual results. So API testing based practices. So we test API to check what happens consistently, you know, and what doesn't and what doesn't. And the next one we have we test for expected results, with what we have with the documentation. Then also we add stress to the system by sending series of API API load tests and also group test cases by category. We create test case and we create test case with all possible input combination, for complete test coverage. And we also prioritize API function and to make it easy for us to test. Then we also automate API documentation creation process to ensure good level of documentation in which it can easily be understand. Also, we create API tests to handle unforeseen problem. I mentioned this in the last class, creating test case. We're creating tests, to handle unforeseen problem. For example, you performing a login, you create a scenario for valid login and invalid login. So depends on manual and automated tests, for a better API testing outcomes. So we have tools for API testing. So I seen on the screen are several tools we use for API testing. So I'm going to play a video for us to watch, just for some seconds. So get the for us to know how API is being API works. So let me quickly check out let me post the link. So do anybody still have that training link that course link I sent to us for API? Hello guys. Yes, for Postman, that link I shared, that course.
Are you
Yes, I
talking
still
about
have it.
request and response?
Please, can you share with me so I put it on the screen for us to see?
Okay, sir.
Just drop it in the chat group. I don't think I can find it anymore. It's a course link for API testing. No, not this one. I mean the course itself. Not this one. The Udemy course I'm referring to, the Udemy course I shared with us.
Okay, I just find it on the group. Should I drop it on the group back?
Yes, please drop it.
Hope you get it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Temi. Thank you, Saud. Thank you, Sandra. So let me play. So okay, let me play. So before we dive into how to create our method, I want us to watch this video. So for those of us that is just joining us, please go to your browser and Google Postman and install Postman on your system. So if you are using Windows, install for Windows. If you are using Mac OS, install for Mac OS. And before you After installing, also go to the Postman website and sign up and create an account, for your Postman, so you have access to some features, on the Postman. So let's pay attention and watch this video before we continue.
Hey folks, and welcome back. In this lecture, we will be learning how to send a GET request using Postman. So first of all, GET method is a HTTP method that basically gets the representation of the specified resource. It basically is used to get information from the resource. So let's see how to basically perform some GET requests using Postman on the student app. So the student app is running on port 8080. Okay, and in order to get the list of all the students, we need to perform a GET request on the students app. So let's do that using Postman. In order to send a new request, I'm going to click on this plus button. So this will create a new request. Okay. And multiple request types over here. Since I want to do a GET request, I'm going to select GET. And here we have to enter the request URL. So since the student app is running on my machine, the server, we don't have any server over here. So it's going to be localhost and the port will be 8080. So in order to get the list of all the students, the URL is http localhost followed by the port number, then student / list. And if I click on send, basically the request will be sent to the server and I should get back a response over here in this region. Okay. And for this particular request, as you can see here, there's nothing over here. Basically, we are not sending any parameters, query parameters and path parameters. So we'll do that later. But in this request, there's nothing being sent. Okay. I'm going to click on send. And as soon as I click send, the request is sent to the server and the server will provide a response back. And this is the response. That is, this is the list of all the students. And by default, we have selected Json here. So if I select auto and send it again, so it will recognize what is coming back. And based on that, it will show you the response. That is, Postman will know what the response is and it will show the correct response over here. You can see the response headers. So the content coming back is application JSON. And that's why it was able to identify and display the output in JSON. And also, you can see that this is the status code. Since a request is successful, we got back a status code of 200. And this is the time for which the request took. That is, how much, it gives all the details about the request, how long it took to go to the server and come back to the client. This is the size of the response. Okay. And these are different types in which the output is formatted, that is, the response is formatted. If I click on raw, it's easier to copy when it's in a raw state. Let's do a Control-R and copy it. This is preview. And this is a new feature called visualize. We will discuss this later. And to copy the response, you can use this particular button too. That is, you have a copy button over here. This will copy the complete response to your clipboard. And this particular search bar is used to search for any information within the response. So I can say, for example, if I want to find the 99 student, I'm just going to type in 99. Since I know the ID is 99, and right here, this is the result. So now let me consider another use case where I want to just get the information of the first student. So I can do that by providing the ID as a path parameter. Okay. So within the URL itself, if I specify the parameter like this is called a path parameter. And if I click send, I'm going to get back the response from the server. And this is the information of the first student. Similarly, I can do 99. I get 99. Right. See, 999. do a send. This time it says the resource is not found. That is, the student with ID 9999 does not exist, and hence the server will give back a status code of 404. Resource not found. Okay. So for the next use case, what we'll do is we'll try to get the list of all the students who belong to the computer science program. I'm going to modify the URL here. Let me list. So this will give me all the students. And if I want only the students with who belong to the computer science program, I'm going to provide query parameters in the URL. So provide a question mark followed by program is equal to computer science. I click send. See, this time I'm getting students who belong to only the computer science program. And also, if you notice, under the query param section, we now have a new query parameter called as program. Okay. So this is a query parameter. Anything that we provide after the question mark, basically these are nothing but query parameters. Similarly, I can provide multiple query parameters in the URL. So if I want to just get one student from the computer science, I can use the limit query parameter. So in order to add an additional query parameter in the URL, I can say ampersand limit is equal to 1. Click send. This time I get only 1. So instead of using providing the query parameters in the URL, we can directly provide it in the query param section in Postman. So here I can provide some, so I can actually remove this, and see, as soon as I remove it, the URL also reflects the same change. I want to add it back. Say limit equal to 2. Into collections and stuff, you can provide some and we also need to provide some information about the student. So in order to create a new student, we need to basically provide all this information. We don't need to provide ID. So we can omit ID and we can basically send the rest of them. I'll go to the body tab over here. And here I'm going to select the data type as raw, then select Json. Paste this here. Let me get rid of ID. Also, I'll change the information. So for the student tab, we can keep everything same except for the email. So the email has to be unique. Say this is John Doe. jd@gmail.com, and I'll leave the rest as it is. Okay. And now all we need to do is basically send this request. So we got back a response. See, the status code is 201, and basically it says 201 created, meaning a new resource is created in the database. And also the response that we got back from the server is student added. Right? Let's see if this new student is added. So this ID, basically we had 100 students, so we just created one more student. So we added one more. So I give the path parameter as 101. I should get back the newly created student. So there it is. Now let me go back to this post request and try to create the same student again. So this time, see, we are getting an error from the server. And basically, it says that the email address already exists. Okay. And also, one more important thing is whatever content type we are sending. That is, if you look at the headers, see, the content type is very important. If I change the content type into something else, so if I change this into XML, for example, and if I send this, see, you will get back a response from the server telling that the media type is unsupported. So whatever content we are sending, if we are sending JSON, we have to select JSON. If we are sending XML, we have to select the XML content type. So selecting the correct content type is also important, and we can do that easily in Postman. That's it for this lecture. To summarize, we learned how to create a new student using the post request. We also learned how to set the body and content type in the request. And finally, we learned about the different status codes that we get back from the server when we send correct and incorrect requests. In the next lecture, we will learn how to update the information of the student by sending a put request using Postman. Hey folks, and welcome back. In this lecture, we will learn how to update the information of a particular student by using the put request. Put request is a HTTP request that basically updates information about an existing resource. So this is the list of all the students present in the student app. So what I'll do is I'm going to update the information of the first student. So let me just copy this. Here I'm going to open up a new tab and select the request as put. And here let me enter the URL. And over here what we are trying to do is we are trying to update the information of the first student, that is the student with ID 1. So instead of list, I'm going to provide the path parameter here as 1. And I'll go to the body. Since we are posting some information or we are updating some information, we need to provide the payload. So in order to provide the payload, select raw and just copy paste this stuff and change the content type to JSON. Don't need the ID here. Get rid of this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to update the information by entering everything in capital letters. Just going to add 101 over here. Okay. So the method is put. This is the URL and this is the payload. So let me now update the information. So I got back a response from the server and the status is 200. Says everything is good. And also we got back a response from the server telling that the student information is updated. Now let's go back and see if this is in caps and also the course information is modified. Let's see that. Just do a get. And as expected, the first name, last name and courses have been updated. That's it for this lecture. To summarize, we learned how to update information of a resource using the put request. In the next lecture, we will learn how to update the information or the partial information of a particular resource using the patch request. Hey folks, welcome back. In this lecture, we will learn how to perform a delete request in Postman. We will delete a student from the student application by performing a delete operation in Postman. Let's see how to do that. So this is the list of all the students present in the student app. Now what I want to do is I want to delete the first student. So in order to delete the first student, I'm going to create a new request over here. and I'll copy this until the endpoint and provide the resource value. So in order to delete the student, we need to provide the ID. So the ID is 1. And here I'm going to select the delete request. Okay. And send the request to the server. And we get back a status code of 204. Okay. So this can differ. Sometimes you can get 200. And mostly the operation is idempotent. That is, if you delete it multiple times, nothing happens here. The response does not change. But in some cases, you might just get an error message telling that resource not found. It depends on application to application. Now let's go back to the list request, and over here, if I retrieve the values, now you can see that the first student is no longer present. That is, we successfully deleted the student from the student application. So with this, we'll end the lecture here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next topic.
So guys, are you still with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, so the short video I've just
Yes.
made for us to see is to show us how to create a GET request, how to perform a POST request, and how to perform a PUT request, and how to perform a DELETE request. So basically, you can see how the guy come up with the URL. There's always an URL created for every of the API requests. So and your URL always comprises of the base URL and the endpoint. So while testing API, the first thing to do is to enter your URL. You select the method you want to use in executing your API request, and you get the response body. And earlier on, I talked about the things you look out for while testing API. Can somebody give me 4 things you look out while testing API? Can somebody mention 4 things you look out for while performing API, while executing your API? Anybody? Tell us your name and give us the 4 things you look out for while performing API testing. All right, Tony, please.
The response code,
Okay.
response body,
All right.
I think those are the 2 I remember.
All right. Anybody want to try again?
The status code.
Okay. Tokwe.
Okay, Balaja. Okay, the status code.
All right. That's fine. We all tried. So the things you look out for while testing API, you look out for the status code. You look out for the time being executed to execute your request. You check for the response body if it validates with what you have on the documentation, and also if you add your test added to your API endpoint, you use it to validate whether your API passed or your API failed. And also you look out for the assertion you added to the API calls while executing your APIs. So that was a good trial from everyone. So let's continue. So in the while we continue, I will teach us how to create a collection for a project, and we'll perform a API test with a dummy REST API to perform API request. So So now I believe we all understand, what it requires. We all understand how to create put request, how to create get request, post request, patch request, and delete request.
Yes, sir.
So as seen on the screen, these are the tools we use in performing API requests. We have Postman, we have testing Wiz, we have the REST, we have the REST API, we have SOAP UI, we have Storm Test Builder, we have Web Inject, we have Run Scope, we have HTTP Master, Easy Test Master, Easy Test Maker, and Parasoft test. We have the Rapids, and we have Soap Sonar. So all these are examples. We have a lot of API testing tools, and the primary tool we use in the industry currently now is Postman, and depending on where you work and how you are familiar, with any of these tools, but generally everybody uses Postman for API testing, and it is worldwide, accepted, worldwide accepted, using API for using Postman for API testing. So if you want to explore, you can go online, download TestWeaves, and you can try any of these tools, on your own. Is added to your skill set, for API testing. So if you can use any of these tools, yeah, rockstar. If you can use 2 or more tools, for API testing, trust me, you are doing well. So for further examples of API tools, we have the Postman, we have Catalan Studio, we have SOAP UI. So these are other examples of tools you can use for API testing, as seen on the screen. So understanding Postman GUI, which is graphical user interface. Always get yourself familiarized with all these abbreviation words. The GUI, API, you should know all what this means. And so we are going to explore the API dashboard. So in the video we saw earlier, should have given us a brief understanding of what an API of what Postman looks like. So Postman is an API testing tool, as explained in the video, I played for us. Postman is an application tool used for API testing by sending requests to the web server and getting a response back. So this is how Postman works. So you are using Postman, to communicate with your server. And if you watch the video, this video, I will imply us, to watch this video, attempt this course. So if you watch this course from A to Z, you won't have any problem, understanding API, and you won't need any teacher, to teach you how API works. You can see set up based by API background, how to set up API, how to set your global environment collection variables, how to create collections in API, and how to use collection runner in API. Then also in the course we have the authentication and verification in API testing, and also we have test and assertion, how to use test and assertion. What I taught us in the last class, how to add tests to your API and how to add assertion, and also how to create variables. Then the next step in your journey, you can, please, it's not a request, please attempt this course. For those of us that have not done this course, the link is already on the WhatsApp channel. Click on the link, then finish this course, and I think sometime I gave us I gave us a task on API. Then I will also give us another task to work on this API training. So this is the link to download Postman, which I believe all of us must have downloaded on our system. So you can just go to your browser, and Google your Postman, and download Postman on your PC, and we should start exploring Postman Dashboard. So this is what Postman Dashboard looks like. We have the part where you select method to use. We have this URL bar where you set in your URL, and your URL always comprises of your base URL and your endpoints. And we have the point, and they have the part where you add in your body or payload. Then we have the part where you add in your test script or your snippets, and then we have the environment. We have the button, we have the link, where you set your environment. Environment is just like it's just like um it's just like a place where you store test data. Maybe by tomorrow, you are testing or staging, and tomorrow you are required the rest of the team, requires the application, to move to UAT, that is user accepting user acceptance interface. So probably there might be some changes, while moving to UAT from staging. So if any updated changes is made, you can easily just come to the environment and update your environment, and whatever you update on the environment, when you run your test again, all your tests will be updated, instead of you going, executing your API one by one and updating the changes. And changes that might occur, maybe you have change in the your changes that might occur, maybe major changes that might occur is your URL. Maybe you were using facebook.com, and tomorrow they migrated to development, development environment. So you can just come to your environment and change your URL, from facebook.com, or probably they are now using facebook.com.ng. So you just come to your environment and update your environment, and it applies to your all your API endpoints. And we have the collection folder, where you have your collection. So on the left side of the screen is all your collection folders, being created, like existing projects you've worked on. And we have the history. Then also we have the result body. So this is where you get your response body when you send in requests. So this part of the screen, shows your response body. And what else? Yeah, that will be all. So, and we have the send button too as well. So once you set up your URL, you set up your method, and you add in your parameters or authorization or body. So once you hit on send request, so you will get a response from the server. So these are just to explore the Postman features. So API methods and response time. So while testing API, we have different methods we can use, and we have the response type. So API testing method includes get, post, put, delete, patch, and some other methods you use in executing API. So as seen on the screen, you can see we have the get request, we have the post request, put request, patch, delete. We have copy, we have add, we have option, we have link, we have unlink, we have purge, we have lock, we have unlock, we have find, we have view. So I haven't tried any of these guys, from copy, add, option to down here. I haven't tried any of these. But the major method used, while testing API is get request, post request, put request, patch, and delete. Maybe tomorrow you might get to use, any of these method, in your career as you excel, in your software testing career. So then we have different type of HTTP response while performing API testing, as seen on the screen. So we have different status, different response code. On sending request, API send response which consists of the body, cookies, header, test, status code, and response time. So the question I asked earlier, that what are the things you look out for while testing API? So these are the things you look out for. We look out for the body, we you look out for the cookies, you look out for the header, you look out for the test. That is the test. The test you added, that is a snippet, to your API endpoints, and you look out for the status code, you look out for the API response time. So there are many status code which can be verified, in the response. Few of them are mentioned below. So we have the 200, status code, we have the 201, we have the 204, we have the 400, we have the 401, we have the 403, 404, 405, 500, and 503. As a software tester, and you perform API requests, trust me, you guys are entry level, in the software industry, and you all be expected, to attend interview. So at the end of this program, we will teach you how to set up. For those of us that will be choosing, to join Quality Certain to work with us, we will with your previous tasks being completed, and your contribution, your attendance, and everything will be judged. These are the criteria that will be used to judge. We used to judge whether we will pick you to work with us or not. So we'll be picking few of you guys to work with Quality Certain for the period of I don't know. You will sign a contract with us, and you're going to be paid in the course of the time while working with us. And after the contract or agreement you sign with us to work with the period of time the organization requires you to work with us, then you can decide to go elsewhere and get jobs. And for those of us that won't be joining us, to work with Quality Certain, we will prepare you how to how to create your CV, and how to create LinkedIn account, and how to apply for a job. We will prepare you for interview. So these are some of the questions you might get to be asked. In the course of your interview, you might be asked, okay, you do API testing. What is 201? What does 201 status code means? As seen on the screen, it is for successful request, and data was created. You can see 200 is for successful request. 201 and 200 are almost the same status code, but 201 is always for success request, and data was created. It's just like you performing a post request, maybe signing up for an application, and immediately you sign up, you will get a response code saying your data was created. So memorize all this response code, for the time being, and get familiarized with all this response code. If you send a request and you get a 500 response code, from the request, that means it's a server error. So get yourself used to this status code. Then key things to look out for while performing API testing. We have the get method. So when you perform a get method, and get method is used to retrieve information, from the server. So you check if the result is accurate, with what you have on your API documentation, and also are the numbers of record, if returned accurately. Also, you are expected to validate and check if the expected field is in the result, when you perform a request. And also you are to filter and accepting the right values, based on the type of data you send to the server. In the example is Boolean data type should accept maybe 0 or 1. 0 or 1 is 0 is true, 1 is false as value of our API you executed. And you also check if the record return is huge. That is, if there is an option for permission on the request. You also check to query the DB. DB means database. So if you're being asked what is DB, DB means that a database. So you have to query the database manually to confirm the question above, for get request. So when you perform a get request method, these are the things you look out for. Then when you perform a post method request, so these are the things you look out for. You use the record retrieval, creation and update. So what you look out for is the record inserted into the table. is the object table created in the DB, is the record updated on the database. Then you also query the database manually to confirm if this question above, is what you expected to fetch from the server. Then also you check if there is data type validation. Example, imputing alphabet into the number field should not not be possible. Email field should accept valid email address. So if you all remember in while we are training us on manual testing, remember we talked about email field validation, password field validation. It's just the same way you are performing manual testing on our API and also performing automation on API. So imagine on your API documentation, you need to check if there is a data type validation, e.g. imputing alphabet into a number field. That means maybe this field, which is the email field, is meant to accept only alphabets, not numbers. So you test, while performing API tests, you check, for the login field. Let me use an example for us to see. Maybe this login field, you need to check. Okay, this login field, you need to check if this field, accepts alphabets. Normally, this documentation is meant to accept just is meant to accept numbers only, and you try to put alphabet and you click on send. You want to see if it accepts. You can see the response says this field, phone number field, you accept digits only. That is how this application is being programmed. So you check for valid login and invalid login. So while testing API, you can come down here, you can duplicate this login and say valid login and invalid login while testing API. So you check for the negative scenario and the positive scenario while testing API.
Please, Mr. David, kindly change it to white. We can't see it.
All right. So, all right. Thanks for the heads up. So you check if there is unique key constraint validation. Each field should accept unique value. Most allow duplicate records in insertion of or update of data. Then you also check if there is a mandatory field validation, e.g. Field that are set to accept nulls or must not accept empty or left out in the body of the message. So for delete request method, so you check if the record is being deleted successfully, by you after you deleting the data, and you send the request again if the deletion method is being executed, while testing the API. You check if the record is deleted from the table. You check if deleting the record preserve data integrity. You check in case whereby the record is not physically deleted from the table, is a record flag, marked as deleted, i.e. that is appropriately column is updated with right value. So for test results, after you adding a test, to your API request, so there are basically two outputs. You check result expected in API test. So you check for the rest for the success message in case of pass, and then an appropriately error message in case of failure. And then also consult the API documentation for expected success / failure message. So what this is actually saying is that imagine maybe let me change this my theme to white as requested. So imagine this request now. Maybe I try to execute this request. Maybe I try to execute this request. I try to execute this request. So let me get the documentation of this request, so you will understand better what I'm trying to say. the base URL. Okay, let me copy out the base URL. So this is the URL for this API documentation, and remember I mentioned your API documentation can come in a different format. Sorry, it's, where's my Postman? So I didn't copy this URL very well. So let me paste in this guy. So you can see this is the URL for this API documentation. So this is a documentation, for for this user service. That is the URL for this collection. So this is the login. So this is the login which I've. So this is the user management. So as seen on my screen, so I have already created collection, for this API for this application, which is on the collection folder. You can see on the screen, and as seen on the screen, the application comprises of 3 rows, which is rider, admin, and driver. So for the user service, I have user service for rider, I have user service for admin, I have user service for driver. So I have created the documentation, for each, and let's use this login endpoint for example. So this login says go back to the documentation. This login said when I input all these parameter, I set in my URL, I pass in the body, which is the phone number, password, user type, as seen on my API document on my Postman here. You can see phone number, password, user type, and etc. So once I pass in this correct value, I should get this response, from the database. So imagine I pass in the wrong response code. Maybe you can see I just pass in this value, and I send this request. You can see I got a value, say I got a response saying bad request. So if by chance I imputed the right value for login, and I didn't get this value, this response body while testing this API, I will come here and report on my your API test case sheet, which I shared with us, to say, okay, for this user service, which is login, user service sub module is the folder in the collection, which is login, and the endpoint, which is login as a user or as an admin. I impute my response body, I impute the actual response body, and the expected sorry, I put in the response on the request body, the actual response, expected response, the method I use in executing the API request, the response code I got, and the status, then whether it passes or it fails. Then if I need to give a comment, I can come here and give a comment that, okay, this is what I got while performing this request, which I'm supposed to get what it looks like, on the documentation at the screen. So this is the response body for the documentation. So you are using what you get on your Postman to validate what you are seeing, here on the API documentation. So let me pass in the right value. So imagine I send this request now, which is login, and you can see the response body. We have status, we have data, we have home coordinates, location, type point, and etc. So if you check this, you can see I have a token value, that is being returned to me, which I can set to the environment, and you can see the structure of this response body. It's almost as the same as this. So I have all this data. So this is a valid, this is a valid login, and this is a past API request which I've already performed. So as seen on the screen. So then we are to check for for the test result. So imagine I pass in this test result. So I have told Postman to set environment for this token that has been generated, while I perform this request. And I also told Postman to validate. Okay, if I get a status code of 200 while I perform this request, you can see PM test valid login, to get a status request of 200, as seen on the screen. So if I come to my test result, you can see valid login pass. You can see body matching string. That means I have this API endpoint, being passed. So you can see on the screen here, you check for the test result, basically if they pass or failed. You can check for the response for the success message and the failure message. So if by chance, the failure message says invalid credential, and when I send that request, I get a bad request or error, I'm supposed to validate the response body, because the documentation say when you perform a invalid request, invalid login, you should get this message saying invalid credentials. But on your documentation says invalid. On your documentation says when you perform this request, you should get this error response message saying invalid credentials. But when you perform the request on the Postman, you see error error 402. Error 402. It's a different error message. So once you spot those kind of those kind of changes in documentation, while you perform that request, you are supposed to report, to your test case sheet, which is this sheet saying, okay, when you perform this request, expected response is to have, maybe error is to have invalid credential. But when you perform that request, the actual response say error 402. So you will give your actual response and expected response, the method they use to get the status code, and you fill it, on your test case sheet. So this is what you will use, to liaise with the developer that, okay, on the documentation it says that you should have invalid credentials when you perform this request, for validating error message you are supposed to get, while using the application. So the developer will work with you and fix that error. And when that is fixed, you can come here and update if it's failed or pass. So while testing API, you should always create a test case sheet, for your API endpoints and everything. So I believe that is understood. So let's continue. So we are done with test results. So how to create our first API request using Postman. So so this says test your front end against your real API. Like I said, API is just you testing your back end with what you have with your front end. And you can test API, you can test your back end, using API independently, even though you don't have access to the application. So we are going to use request.in as an domain API collection. So this request.in, if you click on this, we already have the link, in the chat section. If you click on this link, so it will take you directly, to this web application, which is request.in. So it's a fake data. It's a fake data REST API, that is created, for us to create API service. So I believe all of us know how to create. This API collection folder, and I believe all of us know how to create our API endpoints. If I'm right, guys.
Yes, sir.
Is there anybody here who can't create API collection or create API method? Is there anybody here? If I can't create API on my own, if I can't create an API on Postman, can anybody signify? If I have to go again.
Please, I'm here.
Okay, Kola, you are here finally.
Yeah, I've been around since.
Okay, so I believe Kola, you don't have to. You can. I drop in Udemy course, for this API testing. I want you to attempt that course, and once you are done, we will meet tomorrow on site. So then I believe we can all run API on we can all run collection folder, using Postman runner, and I believe we can all integrate our API using command line. Guys, I believe we can all run API on command line, which is our terminal and our command prompt.
That's
Yes, we
actually
can.
where we are having the issue per se.
Yes, we will.
Is there anybody here that can perform API runner, performing test on API runner? I mean Postman runner and command line or terminal.
You have
Mr.
told us
David,
to
as
download
regards
JSON server.
the command line, I'm still having some issues with the response I was getting from the command line. So I think that's the only thing.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
You have told us to download JSON server for testing. I have downloaded it, and the response is acceptable.
Okay. Rimsha, I didn't get your question well. Can you come again?
I'm saying that you were told us that we have to download JSON server. Did you remember?
JSON server. Yes.
Yes.
So JSON server is just like, for example, when we are trying to explore this web application, which is request.in. Okay, maybe I will take us that tomorrow. So instead of using this created REST API, we can use JSON server, to create
Yes.
our own API, even without using this server. So it's quite a bulky, tutorial, we'll have to use ourselves. But if there is time tomorrow, we can look at it, and I will teach us how to create this web API, services. But really don't need to give ourselves headache about it, because the developers normally create API documentation. It's just like you creating API documentation, as a tester, if you are required to. But normally developers do this work. They create this API, they create this response body, and they create or server, JSON server, for for this API test. Notwithstanding, if you want to broaden your knowledge about it before we meet tomorrow, you can come to this tutorial. How to what is that tutorial again? Okay,
That was
this is
that
for
was a
Docker.
link on GitHub.
Okay. I shared a link, for how to create a JSON server, in the WhatsApp. If you go to the WhatsApp group, you can
You
find
have
out.
shared it. You have shared it. It was on GitHub.
Okay, yeah. So you
Yes,
can,
last lecture you have shared the link.
yeah. So you can just go there and learn how to create JSON server, on your own, and how to create REST API, REST API service. So guys, we've already we've done well today, and thank you for joining. And right now, I believe we know how to create API collection, how to run collection folder on Postman Runner. And tomorrow, we will also look at it tomorrow, how to, for those of us that can't perform tests on API command line, on creating integrating our API calls, using command line or terminal. We'll look at it tomorrow again. And also, if there's time, we will also learn how to create JSON server on our own for
Yes.
API.
I have a question.
All right.
How can we perform performance testing
How
in
can we
API
perform
testing?
what? How can we perform what?
Performance testing because we
Okay.
have different types of API testing, load testing, performance testing, UI testing. How can we perform performance testing in API testing? Did you get
Okay.
my question?
That is using, you have to use JMeter, to, if you want to do performance testing on JMeter on API, you have to integrate your test with JMeter, whereby you use JMeter as a server. Then you integrate your API test, with JMeter. So when you execute your test, your test on post runner, yeah. When you execute your test on post runner,
JMeter is used for as a Java.
yes. So
No,
once you execute your test here, so you will use JMeter, to do performance testing. I can okay, if there is time, we
maybe
will
we
look
can
at that
talk about
later.
performance testing.
We will look at that later, in the future. So how to perform API performance testing, with JMeter.
Sure.
Yeah. So that will be all for today. And for those of us, that are on site, um, we will also the guys online too. So we'll be at the end of this program. We would like us to create a testimonial video. You holding our software, holding our certificate. Giving a record mark. Saying okay, you started your career as a software testing at quality certain, and we will all share this information when the time comes. And also we will quality certain is preparing a t-shirt, for those guys, that are on site, for us. So at the end of the training section, at the end of the internship program, we will all take pictures, with the branded quality certain t-shirt with our certificates. We'll take a picture with the project manager and also the MD, and we will collect testimonial video from each and every one of us. This is just an heads up for us to know to let you know the plans, quality certain have for you, at the end of this program. And also, like I said earlier, we will prepare you on how to get jobs, you know, creating LinkedIn accounts, and formatting your CV too as well, to get jobs out there. And the sky is the limit for every one of us, in the software industry as a quality analyst, quality tester analyst, in the tech industry. So I see Sunday. Have you taken note of the guys, of attendance, the people that are there today? All right. So we will all meet tomorrow, same time. Thank you all for joining. It's been a wonderful session.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
And for those of us that are yet
Thank you very much.
to follow our social media, please Sunday, drop the social media and again, please we have a social media channel which we always post every day. Always go on the social media channel and like our post, and always give a comment. And also we'll be sharing tips and secrets, about software testing. How to grow your career in software testing industry. So do well to follow our social media and always to like our post. Every day we post on social media, and we are on LinkedIn, we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we are on Twitter, and also Medium too as well. So thank you guys. See you tomorrow same time. Enjoy the rest of the day.